Good morning, everyone. As Nicky said, I run Decipher. We're a media consultancy that looks at the evolution of the TV landscape. I'm going to desperately try and avoid using the word digital. It's a word that we actually banned in our office because it is clearly a meaningless word nowadays, that every single thing that comes through a screen is somehow digital. So I'm here specifically to talk about the bigger picture in the evolution of TV. Something very large and exciting is happening in TV. I'm hoping I'm going to set the scene without ruining it or taking any of the jokes away from Jamie's session following up. The evolution of TV is something that is full of misconceptions, and I just wanted to burst a few of those bubbles as we go. I have what looks like a dull wiring diagram slide to start with. It does have some pickies on it in just a sec. I wanted to talk about where we are in the evolution of TV and what that means for the marketing community. And when we look at TV across kind of a 30-year landscape, we always talk about there having been 3 stages up till now, and we've got another couple to come. When I was a kid, I used to come home from school and there were 3 channels, and we used to have to wait half an hour for play school, get through play school, and then you can get to Grange Hill. And that was TV, and it was simple. And so we had this kind of halcyon look back onto the simple days of TV. And that was the kind of time that devices like PCs just began to be talked about on tomorrow's world. We then went into a kind of a period, the multi-channel era, when set-top boxes arrived in our lives. Suddenly we had 300 channels, we had American channels, we had movie channels. But in general, the model was the same. They were linear broadcast channels with no functionality. We just had 300 of the things. And in that period, we went from kind of the analog versions where there were no menus on screen to TV going, the first manifestations of digital when we got menus on the screen. And the astute of you will notice that that's the original Sky EPG, the pale blue one. And that was quite a revolution, the idea that we had functionality on telly. That first electronic program guide, the EPG, was the first bit of user functionality that they gave us. Suddenly we had a menu to look up and down. But that was the only functionality that really happened in the multi-channel period. Now, there was a third period, which we're really still in at the moment, that we call in the company, we call multifunction. So we defined this phrase, multifunction, about 5 years ago, and absolutely nobody has ever picked it up or used it outside of Decipher. So if you want to cheer me up one day, please use the phrase multifunction. I want to explain what I mean by that. If you have a reasonably good spec Skybox or a Virgin box in your home nowadays, you've got a system which can deliver TV in a number of ways. You've got a number of functions now. You've got broadcast still, but you've probably got a personal video recorder, a PVR, that you can record onto a hard drive in your box. You've got this menu on the screen full of data and probably pictures now. And you've probably got on demand. So you've got at least 4 functions sitting in the corner of your lounge that help you watch TV. So most of the big pay TV platforms have got access to on-demand content from all the big broadcasters. You've got lots of rich metadata, all that kind of stuff. But the thing which characterizes it, and apologies if I sound like I'm being rude about the Sky platform, which I don't mean to be, is that the platforms we currently have are actually pretty old-fashioned. The great thing about Sky is it's reliable, but it's actually quite old and clunky in a way, because none of those functions talk to each other horizontally. So they are all separate things. I can watch broadcast telly, or I can come out and I can go to the recordings and watch some recordings, or I can come out and I can go to on demand and I can watch on demand. So we've been waiting for and looking for the next generation of TV, the next evolution of TV. Now there's an assumption, if you read the popular press and you read all the crazy headlines about Netflix and iPlayer and all this stuff, you would assume that we're going to leap from the current generation of TV, this multifunction world, that we're leaping into cloud TV. That the future is the cloud. TV broadcast is dead. The 1950s audience is dead. The future of the BBC is iPlayer. Dear, oh dear. All of those things would lead you to believe the future is an app. It's all on demand or it's streamed. That is the next generation of TV. And the thing I need you to come away with from this morning is the very clear idea that is utter cobblers. Because broadcast as a linear concept has not died. So in 2007, Anthony Rose, who went into the BBC to launch the iPlayer project, stood up at a conference with his BBC name tag and said, broadcast is dead. And the incredibly interesting thing that hasn't happened in the last 5 years is broadcast not dying. And actually, yes, we saw a couple of weekends ago, one of the biggest weekends of live broadcast TV watching, once you've taken sport and Strictly and celebrity and all those kind of programs, actually TV, linear live broadcast TV is massively healthy. So that's a very interesting thing, which kind of indicates that we're not moving to this cloud-on-demand future. Secondly, the internet network in this country could not take 12 million people watching Corrie at once. The internet would melt. So we are at least 2 generations away from our broadband network being possible to allow TV to be a cloud-based feature. And secondly, one of the most important things that people love is the PVR. It's one of those weirdly kind of unreported things that the most important function after broadcast is pause broadcast. It doesn't feature on any of the kind of the headlines, but if you look at all the research, the consumers rank the way they like telly. Broadcast is number 1, pause broadcast is number 2, record broadcast is number 3, and you get on demand down at 4. So the idea that we're moving into this app-based Netflix future is utter cobblers. And that then raises the question about where are we going? So we are looking at a world at the moment which we kind of call this connected and converged world, because there are lots of interesting things happening about the cloud and wireless and broadband with TV. So there's tons and tons of interesting stuff happening. It's just not a leap into cloud telly in this generation. There is one more generation of very sexy, exciting set-top boxes still to arrive. And we're seeing the beginnings of it manifest itself in the market. So I talked about the functions on the Skybox not talking horizontally. We've already started to see the kind of the revolution coming. So that's a UView box with one of the first big kind of innovations. Back was EPG. I'm on the electronic program guide showing me all the broadcast telly. I want to watch that program that was on a channel an hour ago. Rather than coming out, going up to the top menu, going over to on demand, drilling down, finding it, finding their player, drilling down, finding the program, on UView and Virgin TiVo, I can just go left. Go back an hour, find the program, click it, and it just plays straight from on demand. So that's the idea of this kind of connected and converged world, where those separate functions that we've had for the last few years in our kind of multifunction TV world, the functions are starting to integrate into each other. And the interesting thing is they're integrating with broadcast front and center as the core experience. So the idea of a 21st century broadcast channel in this next generation of TV is the broadcast channel is the gateway into an on-demand, interactive, recorded experience. Rather than broadcast being retired, the broadcast becomes the gateway into this exciting future. So it's a very exciting time. We will get to a cloud future, but I will have been retired by at least 10 years by that point. So it's a way away. I just wanted to talk about what we're seeing in the home, because it will then have an impact on data. And I'm using Sky Pickies there because they have nice pickies. The home network is actually one of the most interesting things in this connected and converged era we're moving into. There is a very subtle revolution going on in the way we use telly in the home. If you look at what the US boxes are doing, periodically we're 18 months ahead of the US, and then periodically they're 18 months ahead of us. And we're having one of those periods where they're 18 months ahead of us. And so a year and a half ago, we went to the States to see what the US equivalent of Sky, Virgin, and BT Vision, etc. are doing. And they've all moved into this kind of home network ecosystem. And the idea is, and it's quite an interesting thing, particularly from the data and marketing point of view, is that the pay platforms who control the PVR in the lounge are actually in a very, very important and dominant position, because they're the ones that can project a TV proposition around the home. So the idea is, whoever your set-top box provider is in the lounge, ultimately in this generation of TV, will have the ability to project a TV proposition to every screen in your home. The idea is, I'm sitting upstairs with my iPad in a Sky Home, I want to watch the program I've got halfway through recorded on my PVR, I should just be able to record it. You know, technically that is possible today. It's just being developed across the world as the proposition. I've got a second screen in my bedroom. That screen should talk to the PVR. It should be able to stream channels off it. I should be able to see on-demand content off the box. So the idea is we're moving to a world where the set-top box in our lounge goes through one last big iteration and becomes the most important media server in our world. So the PVR in this next generation is going through this evolution. It will become the most important media server. It will be the channel streamer for around our house. It will probably be an ad server. We'll hear more about Adsmart in a minute. So those companies that control the set-top box are the ones who are in the prime position to create this next generation of TV for consumers. And you know that is good and bad in a number of ways. And of course, we've got Xbox One arriving this week. There's a big battle for how that works. We've just seen Comcast in the US, who've come up with their next generation software for their set-top box, which is brilliant. They've designed it in such a way that they can take all the software off the box and stick it on an Xbox. So the new Comcast system in the States says, yeah, we like that. We control the big PVR in the lounge. The Xbox in the kids' bedroom has got a complete working model of all the software from the set-top box downstairs. They talk to each other. So they're colonizing Xbox One and turning it into an extension of their proposition. So we'll see more and more of these innovations where the people who control the big box in the lounge are able to colonize and take over every screen and device around the rest of the home and create a brilliant TV proposition. Now, from the marketing point of view, that's interesting because it kind of expands the data landscape. Now, one of the other kind of bits of mythology that we've been hearing about in the TV world is this notion of big data. The other big thing I'd like you to take away from this morning is there is no such thing as big data. There's lots and lots of unconnected small data. And TV is a great example of that. There is this kind of thing, you know, this sinister fear that somehow all this data in the TV world is being all added together into this great big sinister future. And it really isn't like that. It's much more complicated than that. So when we look at the TV data landscape, I'm hoping I'm not going to offend Jamie here, but as a neutral looking at it, we've known for years there's been databases with program schedules and advertising schedules. So you can find somewhere on a database what's on ITV1 tonight. It's listed out, it's on a database. And then somewhere separately, there is an advertising schedule somewhere in ITV that says what ads are going in which breaks. And strangely, those two things historically have been unconnected in the TV world. There's been Barb data, which has been about audiences. And Barb, I must say, is still a robust piece of data that delivers against its objective. It tells us how many people saw a particular program on a large channel. There are some questions around the edges, but I'll let Jamie cover those off. Now, with the arrival of pay TV, we had the addition of customer account information. If you're a customer of a pay TV company now, and you know, that includes BT and TalkTalk, Virgin, Sky, etc., you have a customer account entry on their CRM database. So you know, there is data now arriving, which is very detailed customer data, name and address, household profile, what they bought from you, etc., etc. So the pay TV companies have very good data on who their customers are. With the arrival of the internet, we're seeing a generation of set-top boxes in the TV landscape that can finally pull back very interesting data. So suddenly we've got a generation of set-top boxes that can pull back channel viewing data, recorded data, on-demand viewing, so data on how you use telly, and correlate it to household profiles. And we've never had that in TV. So for the first time, as well as broad audience behavioral data, the Barb stuff, we've got the ability to pull back set-top box data. Now, unfortunately, you know, those two things don't necessarily fit together very well, the Barb stuff and the audience data. So one of the big challenges over the next few years for the TV world is to work out how to synthesize some of these data sets into something useful. Now, as we've said, this kind of home networked world is arriving with these great apps and things. Well, the other thing the TV industry is grappling with is what we call the we and the me conundrum. TV is a we media. It's watched in groups, families, friends, couples. You know, people watch telly in groups, and Barb has always been great at dealing with the we. It tells us about audiences. All of the new media tech that we've all been enjoying for the last 10, 15 years comes from a Silicon Valley culture, which is all about the me. Personalization, log on, ID, all those concepts are concepts about the individual. So actually, when we look at the arrival of apps in the TV world, stepping back from the details, we've got a weird cultural clash between the kind of the we cultures and the me cultures. And data is one of those areas where that clash is being manifest, because actually everything on that screen is about household profiles and broad demographics. With the arrival in the pay TV world of individual apps that I can use as part of my broader pay TV subscription, we've got the addition now with this stuff of individual profiles. So we've got a TV landscape now which is grappling with an awful lot of data, both on the individual user and the household user. And when those two things work together and when they don't, it's a very interesting question that we really are still trying to resolve in a minute. But it's an awful lot of separate data sets that at the moment we're working out how to pull together. And of course, there's still more, because you can add into the mix third-party data. If you are a company, like a big pay TV company, you can buy Experian data, you can buy census data, you can buy all the kind of third-party data sets on the market and add them into the mix. You can put shopping data in there if you can plug it in. There's various things you can add into your data set should you wish to, which is very interesting. there's also the concept of advertising data, which we haven't yet seen, but we'll hear more about maybe this morning, maybe later on, where a big advertiser with a customer data set could bring that data set and do interesting things in conjunction with TV. So those are all, this is just us kind of listing out the data sets that exist in TV. As you can see, that slide is really more about a set of questions about how to use data rather than kind of a definitive answer. But we do have lots and lots of small data which are as yet unconnected. However, somewhere in there is the possibility of an awful lot of insight about group TV viewing, individual TV viewing, and other behaviors that we'll begin to be able to tie together. I have kind of one caveat about the TV industry at the moment, because we're going to hear about Adsmart in a moment from Jamie, which is very exciting. When we look at the TV landscape, the thing we like to flag up is that, I'll come back, there are a number of platforms in the UK. After digital switchover, every single household in the UK is watching telly through a set-top box or a connected TV set, which we can count as a Freeview box in this analysis. So every single household has a platform of some form. There are clearly 10.2 million homes that have got Sky. Three quarters have got Virgin. That's the TiVo EPG, the second one in from the left. Then there's the UView household group, which is small but growing. But actually, the UView household is really split between three ways: the TalkTalk ones, the BT ones, and the plain old vanilla ones you buy in John Lewis. So that's kind of three separate platforms with three separate customer databases. Then we've got FreeSat and plain old vanilla Freeviews. Now, FreeSat and Freeview don't capture any consumer data. So they're not in the argument. So unfortunately, that takes 10 million homes out of our ability to talk about the data landscape in the UK. So 10 million homes aren't in the game. That's a problem. BT and TalkTalk have got great big customer data systems which are all about their broadband and their telco, and they haven't brought their TV elements into it. So in reality, the whole of the UView proposition currently is not in the future TV advertising game because they haven't done the work in the system. There is no ad development program of an Adsmart equivalent in BT or TalkTalk. Just doesn't exist. And that's a real problem. Virgin has had a future ad program running for the last 5 years, and with lots of promises to the industry about targeted ads in VOD, et cetera, et cetera. UPC have bought Virgin. They've just sacked all the people working on the future of the advertising program. And that's a problem. So unfortunately, the only game we have in town at the moment is Jamie, who we'll hear from in just a minute. But from a broader industry point of view, it concerns us. So we are bashing on the door of Virgin and BT and TalkTalk saying, guys, you need to do whatever Sky are doing. You need to match that, because it's great that Sky are getting this great competitive advantage and interesting, but actually, from the industry point of view, it leaves a big hole on the right-hand side of this chart with nothing to talk about. And the challenge I'm going to throw at Jamie as I finish off and leave the floor to him is something, it's a stay moment lament I do every time. When we hear from Jamie today, we have to ask the question, Jamie, what hat are you wearing? Because Sky plays slightly fast and loose with who they are when they stand in front of a room. There are at least two companies in the Sky environment that we're going to be talking to and about this morning. One is BSkyB, the platform company on the left here, who own boxes, subscribers, and have data. And the other is Sky Media, who own broadcast channels. So you have this situation where, what's that? There are 10.2 million homes who are Sky subscriber homes, where there is a vertically integrated business that has consumer data and is capturing data across all of their channel uses. But the Sky Adsmart proposition is only really on those channels in those households. So we'll hear about Sky channels and potentially other channels using Sky Adsmart. It's that green box we're talking about. If you say, oh, that's terrific, Jamie, can I do a Sky Adsmart program across all the Sky channels? Maybe you sell Sky channels into Virgin boxes, and no, the system doesn't work. So you can watch Sky channels in Sky boxes and get Adsmart benefit. You can watch exactly the same channel in a Virgin home and other homes, and you don't get it. And unfortunately, this is a difficult landscape to talk about, but that's the reality of the situation we've got in TV at the moment. So we need the whole community to put pressure back on Virgin and on BT and TalkTalk to match what these guys have done, because at the moment, I've got a big bloody empty slide, and I've only got about another year peddling this slide around until people are going to get bored. So what I need to see over the next few years is the other companies matching what BSkyB have done, because we're going to run out of road if it's just these guys doing it. And with that chalice, I'll hand over to Jamie. Was that a great setup? Was that?